Great. Hey everyone, I can see there's a few people starting to join. We might just wait a few more minutes for some stragglers to jump in, and then we'll get started. But thanks everyone for jumping on. You're all going to be muted until we get to the question section. As we're going through, if you do have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. And we'll address those when we get to the appropriate part of the presentation today. Just wait a few more minutes before we get started. Okay. What we might do is we'll give it one more minute, and then I'll get going on the presentation. Right. 13, a couple more people just joined. Kels, are you seeing my screen there?
Yep.
Right.
Not in full view yet, though.
Not in full view yet? Okay. And is it in full view now?
Yep.
Great. All righty. Well, I think we're ready to get started. So, firstly, I'd just like to thank everybody for taking the time to jump on this webinar. Hopefully, we can run through some interesting stuff. At the end of the webinar, if people have more conversations that they want to have, or there's anything that they want to reach out to us about, please absolutely feel free to. Tammy and I are both more than happy to talk specifically about your situation and give you some product agnostic tips on what you might be able to achieve if you've got specific questions. So I'm going to get started on this webinar, how property managers can use AI-enabled voice to improve visibility, performance, and efficiency. As we're going through, if you've got questions, chuck them in the chat, and we'll try and address those live on the webinar. But equally, when we get to the end of the demonstration and the presentation, there's an opportunity for people to ask questions as we go through. In terms of what we're planning to cover today, I'll quickly introduce myself and Artemi, who are running the webinar. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the state of play for real estate communications, what's actually going on with most real estate agents based on the conversations we've had in the market. And then I'm going to talk very briefly about the opportunity, because I think the opportunity is pretty simple. And then we're going to dive into specific pain points. Once we've talked about some of those pain points, Artemi's going to take over, and he's going to actually demonstrate a system called Dialpad, which is something that we've implemented in a range of real estate agents across Australia over the last 12 to 18 months. And then after that, I'm going to talk a little bit about some useful tips for people that are looking to actually adopt this type of technology in their business, and things that we've seen through the various deployments that we've done, not just in real estate, but across a range of sectors, and what works and what doesn't work. So jumping into introductions, my name's Robin. I'm one of the directors of Untangled. I've been working in technology and also financial services for over 20 years. And my main focus with Untangled is how we can get AI-driven communication tools into businesses to drive real business outcomes and enhance performance. Artemi is our technical director. Artemi's got deep technical knowledge in a range of phone systems. He previously worked with Telstra, as well as a number of other telecommunications businesses. And he's actually the expert that comes in and does the solution design for our customers. He works through the implementation with other members of our team, but he's our go-to guy when it comes to really understanding the technology and what it can do. So let's talk a little bit about real estate communication, just set the scene. What's the state of play? Communication with real estate agents.
Hey, Robbie, those slides aren't going through.
The slides aren't coming through? What are you saying? You know what? Bear with me 1 second.
There we go.
Look at that. I knew we were going to have a problem early on. Okay. These are the slides that I just went through. The overview, talked a little bit about Artemi and myself, and I was just getting onto the real stuff, which is the state of play in real estate communication. So real estate communication is fundamental. And we all know, like with real estate agents, they spend all day on the phone, whether they're in the sales side of the business talking to prospective vendors and buyers, or whether they're in the property management side of the business talking to tenants and landlords and service providers. 80% of what's done in a real estate business is done on the phone or via SMS increasingly. And what we know is that right now, most real estate businesses are operating that through personal mobile phones or outdated on-premise phone systems like PABXs. We think that fewer than 3 out of 10 real estate businesses have adopted an advanced voice platform at this point in time. And we can talk about some of the pain points that we think advanced voice platforms can actually address inside the real estate industry. So that's what we're going to focus on today. I've got a really simple slide for what's the opportunity here. And it really boils down, everything in this presentation today and everything in the demonstration today is really going to boil down to a simple principle, which is getting visibility of the calls and the SMSs that are happening in your business. And right now, there's very little transparency, very little visibility on what's actually happening in the calls and the SMSs that your property managers and your team in the office and your team out on the road are actually having with clients, with tenants, with landlords, with vendors, with anybody that's associated with your property management business. So the first pain point I'm going to touch on is distributed mobile teams. And that's a big part of real estate agents. We know that the typical property manager spends between 50 and 80% of their time outside of the office, whether that's, at an asset, looking at, inspections, whether it's visiting owners at the property to inspect things. So much of it's done outside of the office. And so what happens then is when they are getting calls out on the road, traveling from one place to another, or, any time that they're not in the office, it's typically happening on their personal mobile device. And there's absolutely no way to capture the data from those calls accurately. And it's not possible to see those important conversations, what's happening on the calls. Is the client being satisfied? Is there action items that need to get put into a CRM for somebody else to action? So much of it's reliant on the individual person updating the system or taking the actions. So one of the things that we're going to demonstrate to you today is how a AI-enabled voice platform can come into that mobile device space and provide you visibility and transparency over those calls and over those SMSs when clients are in the office or when your team are in the office or when they're out and about. So that's a really important part of what we're going to talk about today. The second part is SMS. So increasingly SMSs make up a bigger and bigger proportion of how real estate teams, whether it's in the property management side or the sales side, are actually conversing with their customers, with their tenants, with their landlords. And often there's no visibility on these SMSs. And so there's a lot of lost opportunities, a lot of ambiguity around what's being done. You don't want to rely on somebody's personal mobile device being the source of truth when it comes to what's been said to whom and when. We're going to talk a little bit about a really specific situation. This is a conversation that we had with a specific real estate customer of ours last week, talking about an arrears tenant and how do we get visibility on who said what to whom and when. How do we know that we're being compliant? How do we manage stakeholder management throughout that process, whether it's the landlord being informed about what action you're taking against the arrears tenant, whether it's making sure that the arrears tenant's been getting the right information at the right time. And it's also about maintaining consistency across your team. How do we know that we're doing the same thing or a consistent thing whenever we have an arrears? Now, it doesn't have to just be an arrears tenant situation. There's heaps and heaps of use cases that we could bring up, but we're just going to dial into one specific case and we'll demonstrate that on the call as well. And finally, a big pain point that we're going to talk about is how do we get accurate data into your CRM, whether it's Property Me, Property Tree, Property Eagle, whether it's Salesforce, HubSpot. You know, we see a lot of different CRMs, and one of the consistent themes that we get from customers is how do I get more information into our CRM so that our team can use that to prospect or to understand what actions need to be taken, or to at least just see the communication history with an individual customer, client, landlord, whatever the case may be. So we're gonna look at that in a little bit more detail. Finally, I just wanted to say, like, these are real. What are we going to go through are real life examples of some of the solutions we've put in place for a range of real estate companies. This is just a small sample. We've got over 50 specific real estate customers, from large franchises to small individual real estate agents and everything in between. And we've learned a lot from working with those customers and from actually putting in place solutions that solve real problems. Every solution we do is customized for the customer, and it's built for their specific circumstances to address their specific issues in their business. So before we jump into the demonstration, I just want to give you guys a bit of a high-level view of what's involved and what's the journey of adopting something like an AI-enabled voice platform in your business, and why do you do it? And when it's done well, it can really empower individuals and teams to succeed in your business. So the first part of the journey is just the initial phone system adoption. And this is the low-hanging fruit. This is where it's really easy to come in and replace your existing system with an advanced phone system. And what you're going to get out of that first phase is you're going to get way more visibility into the calls and the SMSs that are happening in your business. The second thing that you're going to get straight off the bat is you're going to get the ability to scale and configure your business way more than what you've got in your current setup. The next thing you're going to get straight off the bat is you're going to get a way better remote system. So if you've got guys working from home 3 days a week, or you've got guys out on the road, it's the one system, it's all integrated and it's all together. And it works across mobiles, it works across tablets, it works across desktop in exactly the same way. Once we've got those initial phone system adoption benefits, the next thing that you can start diving into is some of the advanced features of these tools. What you're going to see is using AI to transcribe calls, to summarize what's been said on calls, to deliver action items automatically off the back of that phone call, giving you the ability to search for keywords. For example, if you know that somebody was talking about a plumber, but you can't remember which phone call it was, you can jump into the system, search plumber, and pull up that conversation and go back and look at exactly what was said and what you need to do. We're going to look at AIC stats. How do we know that our customers, that our tenants, that our landlords are satisfied from the calls? And we're going to look at playbooks, which is how do we know that people are covering what they need to cover when they're on the phone and they're having conversations? The next level that we can unlock beyond that is going to be things like integrations. And so that's like getting the calls logged, the SMSs logged in the CRM, pushing notes and summaries into the CRM to sit against your property record or your contact record. And we can talk a little bit about the types of CRMs that we've integrated with, whether it's the property me's, the property trees, those types of CRMs. And then finally, you can get deeper data analysis. And so that's like reporting on individual users, how many calls they're making, how good those calls are, giving opportunities for staff to coach their teams to improve the quality of the phone calls that they're having, to get more from those client interactions. And we can also talk about smart automations and trend analysis. Most of the demonstration today is going to focus in on the first two. There's a lot to cover with points 3 and 4. And if you've got a lot of interest in those sorts of things, we can probably have a separate conversation or even a separate webinar to go into those. But we will touch lightly on some of that information today. So without further ado, I'm gonna hand it over to Artemi, our technical director, and he's going to give us a demonstration of the system Dialpad. Dialpad is a Silicon Valley-based behemoth. It came out of Google, and they're probably the leader in business telephony solutions and AI. They've got over, I'll get the number wrong, it changes daily, but 6 billion minutes of business phone calls that they've used to build their AI functionality. And they're investing hugely in this part. I think their research and development budget for Dialpad last year was over $300 million US. So huge business, and they're really leading the way. What Artemi is going to cover in this is a few things. Firstly, he's going to show you how Dialpad can be configured for a multi-site or a multi-team business. He's going to show you the mobile experience, which is going to be really important because obviously we talked about real estates use mobile a lot in their businesses. He's going to show you how the AI transcription actually works, and we'll do a live call, to show you how that works. We're going to touch a little bit on playbooks and what we mean by playbooks. And we're going to show you some of the keyword searching and the reporting data that's available. It's going to be relatively high level, but it'll give you a taste for what we need. So, Artemi, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to hand over to you to start with the demo, mate.
Thanks, Rob. All right. Thanks, guys. Can you see that now, Rob?
Let me just check, mate. Yeah, I've got your screen. Perfect.
Okay, fantastic. So basically what we'll do is an overview of the user experience of what they actually see utilizing these systems. Now, as Rob mentioned before, effectively what we can do is run the Dialpad application on the desktop, so either Windows or Mac. But what you can also do, I'm just sharing my screen here, my mobile screen, sorry, is you can also run exactly the same application on mobile, which allows you to take your calls from anywhere as well, which is a great feature. You can have both devices ring, and you can even toggle between making and receiving calls out of both. But obviously, it's going to be easy to show you on the desktop. So the way that it effectively works is obviously with a phone system is we create things called call groups. But what we're seeing here at the moment is all of our own internal staff. And you can see, as Rob mentioned before, we can also port over or provision mobile numbers. So that gives you the ability out of the same system to be able to send and receive SMS as well, which is a great feature, a great way of another way of being able to communicate with tenants and landlords, etc. as well, if that's the way they prefer to do it, or send follow-up reminders, etc. What we'll do is we'll jump into a call as if I am a property manager. What we do is you can see if you're working as part of the property management team, you can see the staff members that you're actually working with. So obviously these are the guys that are taking calls, and you can see some statuses that they've got now. But if we go to actually make a live call, we can also tell the system what number you want to display when calling them. So obviously from a salesperson perspective, they might want to display their mobile number, but we'll actually go out and call from the property management number. So let's call one of our tenants, and because we need to follow up on some overdue rent. So the call's connecting now. So you can see here that what's happening on a live call is the system will actually start transcribing the conversation in real time, which is great. So after very long conversations, what it's also going to do is put this in a nice recap for us. It's going to give us some nice action items after the call, if there's any action items discussed in that particular call. But what also it can do is when you're on a live call and you're preempting a call about a particular thing, we can, as Rob mentioned earlier, we can create things called playbooks. So what a playbook is basically a set of questions that the agent needs to go through to ask on those calls. So the example for this one would be, the rent's in arrears and we need to chase up a tenant for some rent. So basically the questions here will be saying, hi, it's Artemi from Untangled Property Management. I'm calling to let you know that your rent is yet to be received. And again, we'll follow these questions through, and the AI will then determine if we've actually set those questions. It's a great way of being able to assist the agent on a real-time call and allow them to go through those parts. So then we can also ask things like, can you please let me know when the rent will be paid? And then to give you a date, we can follow up from that way as well. So that's one part to follow a script via a playbook, which the AI will also score and recommend, but also help the agent on the call. But what also can do is there might be some things out of that scope as well, or things that come up when people are actually asking questions. You can see here that it's actually ticking off as I'm going through it. And obviously this can be scored upon and data collected from there. But what also might happen from a property manager's perspective is the tenant might also be asking simple questions like, my washing machine's broken, or I need a tradie, or something along those lines. What you'll see is once the system recognises that someone's asked for a tradie or a plumber or something along those lines, what will happen is the live coach will come in and build out our own specific list of tradies that we have in our area that we can assist on those calls. So straight away we can get to getting Bob out there. We can see he works in the eastern suburbs Monday to Saturday, and we can obviously then book that person in for that tenant straight away as well. Okay. When we go to actually hang up the call, now just before I do that, I'll show you some simple functions like normal call, PBX functionality about transferring calls, etc., and adding other people on the call, which is all pretty straightforward. But the really cool thing on the part is after the call, when we go to end it, we can create a custom disposition. So basically that will allow the caller to basically put what that information was in from there. Okay. What's happening now, you can see it's generating a little recap. And we can actually then go into the recap of what that conversation was about. And you'll be able to see here on the right-hand side, the playbook, and obviously how many questions were answered. We'll see the full transcript here. And this is the brief summary about what our conversation was about. Okay. So again, all of this data here in terms of the full transcript or the recap, obviously we push across or copied and pasted across into the CRM, or we can obviously create some sort of an API integration into your property management system like Eagle or Property Me or Property Tree. But again, you're getting real life data here within these calls. Within these long calls, and not only this particular call, but all calls across the property management side of the business or sales side or complete office, we can also start searching for keywords and things that are being said. Now, you can also see the the tradespeople card was also generated on the call. So again, a good way to see what conversations are being set across a business within a particular time frame, or against a particular tenant or a landlord, or just a particular staff member as well, to help them on those calls and collect real life data. What we might do now is as well, the other really cool feature on this is we can also have the ability to be able to become a supervisor as well. And what I mean by that is, if you are nominated to be a supervisor within a call group, is you can see what your staff are doing to help them as well in real time to get that live touch. Now, what I'll do is one of my colleagues is going to make a call. I'm just going to take his mic off while he's doing that. So just stop sharing quickly. Okay. So if Anton, you can hear me, I'll unmute you, and then we'll jump back in and share.
Hello. Yep, I can hear you. You hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. All right. You'd like me to call now?
Yes, please.
All right.
So what's happening now is Anton's going to make a call to a pretend tenant and ask similar questions. But what I want to show you is give you the overview of you yourself as a supervisor to assist Anton on that call.
Hi, Rob. It's Anton from ABC Property Management. I'm calling because your rent for June hasn't come through yet. It was due on the 1st.
Oh, hey, Anton. Yeah, I was expecting this call. Sorry about that, mate. I know I have not paid.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that you're aware that you're late, but can you tell me what's the cause of the delay for this month?
Yeah, look, mate, it's been a bit of a nightmare. My washing machine decided to die last week, and I had to replace it unexpectedly, and that was a big chunk of cash that I wasn't expecting. So I was counting on that to pay the rent, actually.
Right. Unexpected expenses can definitely throw things off. So what's the plan to get the rent paid? When do you anticipate you'll be able to make that payment?
Yeah, look, mate, I get paid next Friday on the 27th, so I was planning to pay the rent in full then.
Okay, so the 27th, just so you're aware, that would mean that the rent will be 26 days late. As per our lease agreement, there's a late fee of $50 that applies after 7 days.
Yeah, right. I kind of figured there'd be something like that, so I'll make sure to include that in the amount that I pay.
Great. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate you being upfront. I'll check that the rent is received on the 27th, and if not, I will be in touch again.
Cool. Thanks, Anton. Thanks for your understanding. Hey, I meant to let you know there was an issue with the toilet at the property. Would it be possible to get a plumber around to take a look at that?
Okay, that's not good. So it sounds like an emergency issue. So we do have Pete the plumber. His number is 0423 654 987.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. If I give him a call, then he can come around and sort it out.
Definitely, he works 24/7, and he's available.
Awesome. Thanks, Anton. Bye.
Anytime. Have a good day. Bye.
So you can see, guys, also as supervising, I also have the option to be able to barge in and listen in and help Anton on that call. So what we effectively do then is, as a operator, we can actually see then the calls that Anton just had, which was just now. And as a supervisor, we can actually monitor this particular call that's come in. So let's have a look at this phone call. Just building it out. And the transcript, you can see the full transcript here in this part, and then you can see the actual recap of the conversation that was said. So again, really good information, because Anton asked Rob when he was going to pay his rent, and it also mentions the $50 late fee, and then obviously helped his problem of getting the toilet fix as well. So there is an action item there, because Rob's going to call the Pete. We could also put that note in as well. We can, from here, create comments to share with our colleagues as well about what was happening on the call. So again, and also download the data, and if there's a recording, go in and review that call as well. Okay, so really getting the information to the right person at the right time, but also then from a coaching exercise is obviously being able to see exactly that right information was sent as well. Okay, now all of this is great. So we see the user assist cards, etc. But what we're also going to be able to see is some really cool data across the organization as well. So what I mean by that is you can get really granular now in terms of what it is that you're actually looking for. So we get some nice simple graphs about, if you want to search for the calls in a particular time frame or a particular day against a particular person or a user, or maybe even a client or a tenant or whatever that may be. But again, you'll see here some trends that happen in the organization. So how many inbound, outbound calls, who are the leaderboards, how long they're on the phones for, how many calls they were making, etc. And what is really cool about this is you can also then see the Dialpad AI doing something really clever, which is actually creating its own customer service satisfactory service as well. So not only previously you'd have to ask a client if they were, give you an agent a score out of 1 to 10 potentially. Now, basically, this AI CSAT can actually score every single call. You would then be able to see the percent satisfied against a particular agent, how they're trending, how they're changing, etc. So some really cool data. Some of the other stuff that you can get as well is service levels. So basically, if we only want to miss a certain amount of calls against an organization, we can see if people are meeting those service level agreements. More importantly, we can see some cool stuff around the status of all the staff and the agents, meaning, how long they're on phone calls for, how long they're off duty, on duty, etc. You'll be able to see all of this data come into here as well. And again, it gives you some really good insights into the organization. And then also things like heat maps as well. When are the busiest times of the day that you guys are on the phone as well, or receiving calls? I did touch on the dispositions previously as well. So we can create the dispositions, which will allow you then to see what people are actually talking about. And these can all be customizable based on the company or the call group, or even a particular user as well.
So for example, there, Kels, could you have a disposition around rental arrears, and you would be able to track how many phone calls were in relation to rental arrears in the business, something like that?
Yeah, not only could you do that, Rob, you could do it against a rental and arrears of all calls, but then you could even get granular and see how many times rental and arrears was people called yourself as a tenant who never pays their rent in a particular time frame. And again, then you can go into each of the calls and see what was actually said and what was promised or what was actually agreed upon.
Sure. So this is obviously a great way for people to see what's happening in their business and then potentially identify issues and address those issues with coaching, training, those types of things, right?
Absolutely. So again, you can see here the data that is working for you. So as Rob initially mentioned in his slides, we're not only getting the office phone system and everyone be able to communicate together and help each other on those calls, but also potentially getting the ability to be able to add mobility, mobiles, SMS, all directly into this same platform as well. So if we wanted to start reporting on text messages, as an example, we can also do this as well. But I think the key thing is getting that data in real time, but also post the call so we can actually do something with it and feeding that back against potentially your source of truth, like your practice management software as well.
Sure. Can you show us how we could send a text message from this system, Bartemi?
Yeah, absolutely. So the example would be, let's just have a look in here. We can go, so obviously there's the call function where we can, which I showed you before, where we can choose which number you want to display when calling somebody. But the simple part in the text message section is we can send someone a text message, and we will do test is one example, 1-to-1. But where it gets really cool is, and obviously this is just from my personal mobile to myself, but what you can also do is we can actually create a mobile number to sit against the call group, and that will give you the ability for any of the staff members to respond or send a text message from that same mobile number, so it gets answered really quickly.
Amazing. So you could have 5, 6 people responding from one mobile number to any customer that texts you on that number, yeah?
Absolutely. And we've also, depending on the practice management software, there's also obviously the ability for the API access to be able to send out from there as well if it's following up for jobs or just responding via that way as well. But I guess the point is any of the staff members will be able to respond in an appropriate time.
Amazing. And just to be clear, let's say that I'm a property manager and I'm out at a property and I take a call on the Dialpad app on my mobile phone. Is all of this feature going to be running in the background, or do I actually have to turn it on and do this through my mobile phone?
No, all of this feature will still go back into this system, and if we've created some sort of API integration, or at least you want to collect the information from the analytics part, then it's always going to be the same. Even if there is a requirement for some staff members that still want to use a desk phone, the same information will still go through as well. So not only on the calls taken on the mobile app or the desktop app, or even a traditional desk phone, we'll still be able to have all this information sitting within the Dialpad system.
So literally my phone rings the same way it does today, and I answer the phone call on my mobile, and all of this smarts is happening in the background. That's what you're saying, yeah?
Absolutely.
Amazing. Cool. Was there anything else we were going to demonstrate? Just conscious of time.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it as there. And I think, as you mentioned, like it is very feature rich, but we want to make it as simple as possible. So if there's anything else that people want to ask, then we can obviously provide a demonstration later on.
Cool. Why don't I take back over then? Cool. So just before I move on, actually, it's probably just worth like touching on what did we just see through that demonstration. And the big takeaways for me are that this operates exactly the same way as you currently use your mobile phone. So you get an SMS or you get a text, it comes through to your mobile phone or to your desktop. So there's no great behavioral change that you're looking for here. Now you can port mobile numbers in, Kel. So if I've got an existing mobile phone number that I want to port into the Dialpad world, I can bring that in, can't I? Or an existing business landline number that I want to bring into Dialpad, we can transfer those numbers into this system. That's right.
Absolutely. So all Australian mobile numbers, Australian landline numbers, and even toll-free numbers like 1300 and 1800 numbers as well.
Sure. And let's say I wanted to run a team from the Philippines to do my arrears chasing or something like that to try and get some operational efficiencies and cost savings. Could I have a team in the Philippines calling from an Australian mobile to a customer using Dialpad?
Yeah, you make a good point. And we've got a lot of customers that already have that set up as well. So basically, including their offshore staff being a part of the Australian operation, that could be any particular jobs. But to answer your question, yes, they will be part of it. We can assign them an Australian landline number, or they could be part of one of the call groups to be able to make and receive calls and SMS on behalf of your organisation.
Amazing. Well, look, there's a lot in there. If there's one takeaway, what I would say is that if you've got a business that's operating on mobile phones, there's so much information that you're not getting to see. And there's so much opportunity in all that data to coach your staff, to improve your business, to make things more efficient, get data into your CRM. And the avenue to do that, the key to do that is to adopt an AI-driven phone system, whether it's Dialpad or whether it's something else. We think Dialpad's one of the best on the market, but there are others. And the key is that it doesn't require huge behavioral change from your team to adopt it. Why don't we just touch a little bit lightly on what makes a successful adoption? Because so often we see businesses take on new technology, but the actual success of that solution really depends on the quality of the deployment of that solution. And so one of the things that we think is really critical is going through a clear process of adopting that technology. The first part is making sure you got the right solution in the first place. So there's a process of designing the solution, really understanding the needs of the business, what you're using voice for, what you're using SMS for, what CRMs you're using, and coming up with a solution that works for your specific situation. And then the next step is customizing it for your business. So if you've got 3 offices or you've got 3 teams and an outbound call team in the Philippines, making sure that the solution has been set up for your specific circumstances. And then the absolute most important part is onboarding and training users on not just how to use the new system, but why they should be using the new system. Because if they understand why to use it and how this helps them in their day-to-day, they'll actually do the behavioral change and adopt the new system, and then it'll start working for you. If you don't teach people how to use it and why to use it, they won't use it. Next is thinking about integrations, not lastly, it's number 4 of 6. It's thinking about how the integrations are going to work. So what CRM do you use? Do you want this data to go into your CRM? Do you want that to be automated, or do you want your team copying and pasting that information in? Lastly, it's how do we get the analytics, the data, the insight out of the system to feed back into the processes of the organization to make it better, to make it more efficient, to make those procedures smoother. And the last point, this is a really important point, is what sort of support do you have around you to make sure that it's going to be a success? They're the 6 things that we think are really important in adopting the technology. Okay, how long does it take, right? Like, it's an important question. So we've done, I'll call it 1,000 deployments of different phone solutions, dial pad, Teams, all sorts of things. And so we've got a pretty good understanding. The time frame depends on the complexity and the size of the organization, but typically it's about 1 to 2 weeks of research into how do you use phones, what do you do, what systems, what sort of teams do you have. And then once we've got that information, it's about 2 weeks of designing a solution that's customized and specific to your organization. Then we start and set up a deployment program and a user training program. And we do that in chunks. So we don't just get everybody in a room and teach them. We do it in sort of five-person teams. And each team that has a specific use case, we do a specific training for that. So if you're an admin person, there's a different training program for you than if you're a property manager or if you're an office administrator. And lastly, we do a bunch of testing. So that training can take anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how big your organization is, how many teams you've got. And then it's about a week of testing, making sure that it's all working, making sure that the call cards have been configured, that the dispositions have been set up. And we hold your hand and do this for you through the process. And then once that's all done, we'll go live. Typically anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks to run through that project. Lastly, I'll just touch on some practical tips that we've seen through the various deployments that we've done that make for a successful implementation. And firstly, I'd say is you've got to assign somebody in the team to own this type of project, be the project manager. They don't need to be super savvy on technology. They don't need to be, a whiz at phone systems. What they need to be is organized, and they need to be able to run from start to finish through a project and take it from completion, organize all the cats herd the cats, as the saying goes, into some sort of order and get people where they need to be when they need to be. It's absolutely essential that you undertake some sort of network assessment, understanding what CRMs you're using, understanding what your current phone system is, because that's how you build the business case, right? For this, you need to understand what you're spending, where you're spending it, how good is it, what sort of outcomes you're currently getting, so that you compare that to the outcomes that you're going to get. You really need to adopt the change management process. You need to make sure you're doing tailored user training. I touched on that before. You need to go through a process of user acceptance testing, and then you need to make sure you've got the technical support in there when you go live, so that when inevitably things aren't working exactly as planned, you've got someone there that can troubleshoot those issues. So look, I think that's the end of our presentation. I just wanted to open the floor up to anyone that might have a question about what they've seen today. We've gone over a lot of information really quickly, and there's a lot more that we could show. But if there are any questions, fire them through now. Just here we go. What have we got?
Hey, Rob, I've got a quick question. What are the two or three pitfalls you've seen when implementing this program or this AI?
Yeah, look, I think the main one that we see is people not really having a plan for how they're actually going to utilize this system. And I think it's really important to start small and then expand out from there. So finding a team rather than trying to implement it across every single part of your business simultaneously in one go, I think where we see people get better results is when they hone in on specific parts of their business where they can see real benefits for this, and then they get it going and working well in that particular part of their business, and then they expand from there rather than trying to boil the ocean in one go. So yeah, I think that's Lachlan, that's probably where I would see the biggest pitfall is trying to do too much too soon.
Thanks, Rob.
Just going to see. Is there any other questions that people wanted to fire across? No, it looks like we've got a shy group. That's fine. What we'll do is if you do have further questions and you want to just ping them through to Artemi or I directly on our email, we'll share our email details at the end of this. We'll take it from there. But I think we've just reached our end time. So we'll close off the webinar here. And thank you all for attending. Artemi, thank you very much for taking us through the demo. We've covered a lot of ground. As I said, we'll email everybody that's attended today a copy of the webinar. And if you do have any questions that you want to send through to us, please absolutely do. And we'll be happy to just talk at a high level or a really specific level, whatever you want to do about your particular situation. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining the call. And we look forward to hopefully touching base with you guys again in the future.
Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.